What's up, investors? It's the Russian Dude. A photo from apartment building in St. Petersburg explains Russia's recruitment strategy better than any speech, because on one side there is a polished advertisement for drone operators aimed at men between 18 to 35, promising a high-tech position, second or third line of defenses, no assault raids, no infantry, and the comfortable idea that a young man can use computers, even gaming skills and technology, instead of being sent to the worst parts of the war. While on the other side of this picture, there is a much rougher advertisement aimed at men between 18 and 60 already, including people with hepatitis, tuberculosis, HIV and even AIDS, with a message that basically says it will be tough but fun. At first glance, these look like two completely different offers, one for students and technical people, and another is for desperate manpower. But then you notice the detail that changes absolutely everything. Both of these advertisements have the same phone number. I did not include it here, so you don't call. One story is the image because Russia is just seeking young men with seemingly a choice, while the real question is whether that choice still exists after the contract is signed. The Ministry of Defense takes control, and the same system that promised a drone job gets to decide whether this person is qualified to even keep it. So today, let's look at the new Unmanned Systems Forces, or USF, how they are being promoted to students as modern career path, how the fine print gives the Ministry of Defense room to move people elsewhere, why a one-year contract does not really mean 1 year under mobilization rules, and why real stories from drone operators and their families make the so-called safe position look extremely different. Guys, before we begin, just a quick mention that every single one of these episodes that you're watching right now that is uploaded to our Patreon has an additional chapter at the end. Your memberships by far are the best way to support our work. The link to our Patreon is down below. Thanks much. Now let's begin. Here's where it gets interesting, because Russia is no longer recruiting only with the old language of sacrifice and duty. It is now selling the same war through technology, career prospects, and opportunity, especially to young men who might never imagine themselves as infantry, but might believe that they can serve at least in a cleaner and a smarter role. The Unmanned Systems Forces, or once again USF, are real in the one sense, because drones have become central to modern warfare, and any military now needs operators, engineers, communication specialists, and people who understand how just in general unmanned systems work. But real military need has been wrapped inside a recruitment campaign. Russia has turned the UCF into a public relations product with street banners, social media posts, college visits, and a 15-part promotional campaign designed to make military service look less like being absorbed into dangerous war and more like joining a patriotic technology sector. This message is aimed at students and young technical people because they are exactly the people who may be scared away by the word infantry, but may listen when they hear words like unmanned systems, engineering, and cutting-edge military technology. That is why this speech is appearing in colleges and schools, where military representatives promote what sounds like a limited offer for future drone operators, while brochures, requirement lists, and Ministry of Defense PDF files create the feeling that this is not another vague army promise, but a formal pathway into a specific branch. And that feeling matters, because young people and their families know regular contract service can lead, and most likely will lead, to places nobody wants to go. So recruiters have to create the impression that this is different. They say second or third line. They say no assault raids. They say drone operators. If you only listen to these advertisements, the offer sounds even like a way to avoid the worst parts of the war, while still collecting the benefits of military service, like millions of rubles, to say the least. But once you read the documents, the fine print, the promise becomes much weaker, because the details, once again, are always in the fine print. Now here is where most Russians assume that if a promise appears in an official document, then it protects them. While in reality, the official language can also be written to protect the institution, while leaving the person signing with very little control. The Ministry of Defense PDF brochure explaining all these unmanned system forces, blah blah blah, downloaded from the school website in the Volgograd region, like many other schools as well, says a future drone operator signs two documents. The first, standard Ministry of Defense contract, and second, an appendix that appears to contain special assurances connected to these unmanned systems forces. At first, this sounds reassuring, because the recruit can tell himself he's not signing just a generic military contract, but something more specific, something tied to drones, something that should keep him away from the regular infantry service. But the wording is where the danger is hiding. The document says that during the contract, which is at least, quote-unquote, 1 year, you know it's not true, the service member will serve in the branch responsible for unmanned systems, provided he meets the occupational requirements. That last condition changes the whole meaning, because it means the person is not guaranteed permanent USF service simply because he signed this appendix. He gets that role only if the Ministry of Defense decides he meets the requirements. And this decision happens after he has already signed, already become an active duty service member, and already lost the simple option of just walking away. The PDF describes a 3-month probation period, starting from the official enlistment day, and at the end of that period, the ministry determines whether the recruit complies with the standards. A young man signs first, enters the military system first, and only then can that same system decide he is not suitable for the role he thought he was signing. If the ministry says he does not qualify, he is not sent just home with an apology. No, he is already a service member, remember, first document, which means he can be reassigned. That is why the consent clause is so misleading. The appendix says the ministry may assign the service member to another job unrelated to unmanned systems only with his consent, provided he meets the once again requirements. A recruit may focus on the word consent and feel safe, but the phrase provided he meets the requirement weakens that protection, because if the Ministry of Defense says he does not meet them, the whole logic changes. And guess what? The Ministry of Defense is the one making that decision. If this is not a scam, I don't know what else is. The requirements are broad enough to give the system room to maneuver. Basic English, mental fitness category 2, decent physical fitness, advanced analytical skills, proper vestibular system, fine motor skills, and PC literacy. Some of this sounds reasonable for a technical role, but in this context it can become a control mechanism, because a person can be failed in English, failed by physical training, failed by a psychologist, or failed according to vague criteria around the motor skills or even mental fitness. The recruit does not decide whether he is qualified. His family does not decide. Even his personal doctors do not. The recruiter who made the promise, guess what? Does not even decide. The ministry, once again, decides. And once the contract is signed, that decision can change the person's future. Life, to be honest. Even worse, this uncertainty may not end after the first 3 months, because someone can qualify at the beginning and later be declared unsuitable after stress, injury, exhaustion, or other problems common in the wartime conditions. So, as you can see, the advertisement sells certainty, but the document gives flexibility to the military. And that flexibility is exactly what makes the offer so dangerous. And it all started with the promise of just 1 year service, like many of you guys heard. That was the first flexible thing ever, and it only got worse later. Now this is the detail that changes everything, because the recruitment campaign leans heavily on the idea that this can be a limited period of service. Maybe 1 year, maybe 2-3 months, then with 2-3 months of training, and then just a shorter real deployment, after which a student can return home and continue life as before, with millions of rubles in bank account. That is one of the strongest psychological hooks in the campaign. It tells the recruit that he is not giving away his future, only taking a year, helping the country, earning money in the process, gaining experience, and then just coming back to university or civilian life like nothing happens. But under Russia's current legal reality, that promise runs into Vladimir Putin's decree number 647, signed on September 21, 2022, the mobilization decree that applies not only to mobilized men, but also to contract service members. As long as that decree remains active, Ministry of Defense contracts are effectively prolonged automatically, regardless of the formal term written into the contract, which means the paper may say 1 year, and, well, usually it does. And the recruiter may even say, don't worry, just 1 year. But then the state can still keep the service member in the system indefinitely. This is the part the promotional campaign avoids, because it destroys the feeling of a safe temporary commitment. No appendix connected to the USF can override the Commander-in-Chief's, Putin's, decree, because a lower level promise does not cancel the broader mobilization framework that keeps contracts from ending normally. This is why the talk about training is also misleading. Recruiters can say drone operators will undergo 3 months of training, or sometimes at least 2 months of training plus even 1 month of leave, believe it or not. Sounds like even paid vacations or something, which makes the dangerous part sound shorter and even more manageable. But even if someone really receives this training, and even if he really enters a drone unit, that does not mean he gets to leave when the advertised period ends. The financial incentives reveal the same logic. USF recruits are offered the same package as other contract service members, including a multi-million ruble signing bonus and a loan write-off of up to 10 million rubles. A government does not usually spend that kind of money just to let a person train for several months, serve briefly, and return to civilian life because a campus recruiter made the arrangement sound temporary. From the state's point of view, it is not buying one neat year of service, it is buying control over manpower, over a person's life. Then comes the scale problem. The last page of this PDF reportedly lists the total number of candidates the 2 and 3 months training programs across Russia can accommodate, and that number is only 1,640. Meanwhile, official figures shared by both Vladimir Putin and Dmitry Medvedev claim that around 30,000 people sign Ministry of Defense contracts every month. It is brutal math, to say the least. If 30,000 people sign contracts every month, but this pathway has a capacity for only 1,640 candidates, then the chance of getting the clean, protected, highly technical version of drone service is significantly smaller than the advertisement suggests. And even for those who do make it into the drone units, there is another question the campaign does not answer honestly. Is this job even actually safe? Let's now take this a step further, because the emotional power of the UCF campaign comes from one simple idea. Drone operators are not regular infantry, so they must be much safer. A young man imagines himself away from the most dangerous zones, sitting with equipment, using a screen, like goggles, maybe a controller, maybe even using his gaming experience, while somebody else does the physically brutal part of the war. But people describing actual drone service, former drone operators or current ones, tell a much harsher story. One viewer, for example, wrote about a neighbor's son who became a drone operator, saying that the reality was nothing like the promotional campaign, because instead of sitting comfortably in a vehicle with equipment, operators were dealing with miserable field conditions like regular soldiers, cold, injuries, serious psychological pressure in general. Another person directly challenged the idea that drone operators are far from danger, saying they can be around 5 kilometers radius from the combat zone, because the closer operator is, the better the connection is, the faster the launch, the more useful the drone can be just in general in real battlefield conditions. That may make military sense, but it destroys the civilian fantasy of a clean technical job far behind the front lines. Drone operators also become then the priority targets precisely because drones are so important. Both sides understand that the person operating the drone can and most likely will shape what happens on the battlefield, which assaults happen, which do not. Which means drone teams can be located, disrupted and targeted like the other valuable military assets, if not more. Some people also described operators being ordered to search for lost or damaged drones, because the equipment is expensive and command may want it recovered if it can be repaired. And just think about it. These details says a lot, because the advertisement makes the drone operator sound like just a protected specialist, while reality may include being told to look for a piece of equipment, not even certain if it's still working or not, under dangerous conditions, because the system values the drone valued at $10,000 maximum or even $500 the least, and then expects the person to just obey and find it. There are also accounts of younger men who entered drone-related roles and still face serious consequences quickly, including one story about a reconnaissance drone operator with poor health who was accepted anyway, faced 2 serious incidents in 2 months, ended up hospitalized, and still was not discharged and sent back. The issue is not that every drone operator has the same experience. The issue is that the public campaign shows the safest version of the role, while the real accounts show that drone operators can still be close to the front, exposed, and trapped in the broader military system. So even if a recruit beats the odds, passes the requirements, enters the UCF and becomes a real drone operator, he has not escaped the war. He has only entered a different part of it. And once a person is inside that system, even specialization may not protect him if command decides otherwise. Now here is the most important part of today's video, because the strongest argument recruiters have is that specialized people are way too valuable to waste. But Russian military practice has repeatedly shown that being useful does not always mean being protected. This is why people bring up the cases of Ernest and Goodwin. Dmitry Lysakovsky, known as Goodwin, was not just a random drone operator, because he was involved in creating drone units in the entire Donetsk and Lugansk regions. And yet, after reportedly falling into conflict with a senior officer, Colonel Igor Puzik, some of you might remember this notorious guy, he was ordered to assault operations. His story became one of the examples how people now use when warning that even experience and importance inside drone operations do not guarantee protection from reassignment. If someone like Goodwin could be pushed into that kind of role after conflict with a command officer, then what exactly protects just an ordinary unnamed recruit who signed a contract because a brochure promised him a modern technical path, millions of rubles and safe assignments? Families should ask this question before the contract is signed, not after. There are also similar stories on a smaller scale then. Men who signed expecting drone service but ended up in assault infantry, men who were transferred after mistakes or problems, and men whose names were never even become famous enough to be discussed in the media. These are personal stories, but they matter because they show how little power the recruit has once he is inside the system. The money side also looks different from the recruitment pitch. The campaign suggests a person can earn serious money, collect a large signing bonus, use the loan write-off of up to 10 million rubles, and improve his family situation. But people connected to soldiers say drone operators often spend their old money on spare parts, body armor, anti-drone systems, and other equipment that should logically be supplied by the state. One person who said they worked at a bank described active duty soldiers transferring large sums of money, sometimes having cards even blocked under anti-money laundering and terrorism financing rules, and then trying to explain to the bank calling from the front lines in Ukraine, "Hey guys, listen, I'm right here shooting and drones flying," and explaining to that the transfer was connected to buying drones and equipment. If that picture is accurate, then the financial promise becomes weaker, because the service member may not simply be earning money from the state. He may also be paying back into the war from his own pocket just to survive or keep his unit functioning. Today's story is a story about a state that needs manpower but wants to present that it needs as technology, patriotism, education, and opportunity. It tells students they are not signing up for the old war, but for the future. It tells gamers that their skill matters. It tells families that 1 year is manageable. But when you read the fine print and listen to people describing real experience, the picture changes completely. Because the ministry decides whether the recruit qualifies. The mobilization decree can keep him past the advertised term. The training capacity is tiny compared to monthly contract numbers. Drone operators can still serve near the front. Specialists can still be reassigned. And the money can disappear into equipment, supplies, and just very basic survival inside a system that makes promises on paper and then the very next day demands obedience in practice. This is why those two St. Petersburg advertisements posters that we spoke about in the very beginning of this video, this is why they matter so much. The polished drone ad and the rough manpower ad may look different, but if they all lead to the very same phone number, then the real question is not which offer looks better. The real question is what happens after the call is made. The problem is not only that Russia's Ministry of Defense may be using clever wording, attractive advertisements, university presentations, and technical branding to pull young men into contracts they do not fully understand. No, the deeper issue is that this campaign tries to make participation in the destructive war feel like a normal career decision, as if just a student is choosing between jobs. and as if a gamer is finally finding his purpose in life, and as if the only question is whether the service conditions are comfortable enough. Well, guess what? They're not. And even if they were, the moral reality would not disappear. For more than 4 years, this war has drained Russia's people, money, equipment, and future, while bringing ordinary families nothing except fear, debt, grief, and more pressure from a state that constantly needs new ways to replace the people it has already used. And this new USF recruitment campaign shows exactly how the war is being repackaged, just for the next audience. At first, the state needed people who could be pressured directly. Now it also needs people who can be tricked and flattered. So the question is not whether drone operators are more modern than infantry, or whether the USF sounds more professional than regular contract service. No. The real question is whether anyone should trust a system that needs to hide the worst parts of the contract behind the best-looking advertisements. Guys, if you found this breakdown useful, please make sure to subscribe to our channel, like this video, don't forget about the Patreon, the link is down below. Thanks much, see you on Pro Friday.
We won't succumb to their tricks, the facade they try to sell. Their twisted words and feeble claims on us all they cannot quell. We see through their lies, their feeble attempts to sway. We do not believe in ridiculous Russian propaganda.